Hello everyone! Today we'll be continuing our series on Nox. The subjects of this video are ASP12-1 and ASP12-2. This analysis has a clearance level of 1. If you have not watched part 1, it is recommended for understanding this video. As I had mentioned in said video, I will continue to analyze the credibility of the claims and whether or not they match up with our current evidence alongside explaining the information in science. With portals, we should begin with an understanding of what these are doing before diving into the science of how they are doing it. As mentioned in the entry log data, there will be two subjects in this video. Portals come in two forms. There is the shimmer and the rift. These portals have distinct functionality from each other, as well as having visible divergence in their appearance. A shimmer is in appearance as the name describes. It takes the texture of a shimmer warping the light that passes through, creating an effect similar to that of extreme heat. Shimmers can be domestic and only travel to other places on Earth or in a lateral direction dimensionally. Think of Missy's first video on the portal in Colorado. Rifts can be seen through to the other side. These portals lead to other dimensions in our universe intersecting with us at a given time. Essentially, these portals seemingly only have the ability to link to other dimensions and cannot be domestic like the shimmer. These will look like the portals seen in Skinwalker Ranch. These portals are made when longer connections are made, such as far lateral connections and vertical connections. More on lateral and vertical later. So now you may be wondering how these portals are created. Well, this is where it links to Nox's work in rare earth mines. Portals appear more there. They're still not 100% sure why, but the most likely culprit is the properties given off by the rare earth metals, such as magnetism or radiation. When the dimensions are intersecting, the forces given off by these metals tear a rift through reality. Although this is mildly speculative, so take it as you will. Also keep in mind there are many contributing factors. Skinwalker Ranch also had many rifts, and the NIDS team measured a large amount of magnetism and radiation. This furthers the idea and credibility of the correlation between rare earth metals' effect on the environment and rifts. This could also mean the NIDS team learned more than was shared in the media coverage of their investigations, given the individual mentioned in part 1 of this series understanding the significance of rare earth mines. As far as dimensions go, don't think of it as another set of spheres with their own orbits as seen in media such as World Trigger. It is difficult for the human mind to comprehend the dimensional levels other than our own that these systems operate on, but do not think of orbiting worlds. If you imagine a mosh pit of Mobius strips, that may be slightly more accurate. It is a chaotic, complex system on another plane of existence. A Klein-Bottle periodic table chart demonstrates just how chaotic these intersections can be and why there is so much variety. Speaking of Klein-Bottles, in terms of how those dimensions connect to our own, it connects utilizing naturally forming Klein-toroid formations in the fourth dimension. In mathematical theory, the Klein-Bottle is a non-orientable surface, which in layman's terms means a one-sided surface that ends up going back to where one started, but on the other side of the plane, flipped upside down. This is the basic way our dimensions connect. Since the Klein-Bottle is a bit of an idealist form, and Klein-toroid is not general enough for our purposes, we will be referring to this shape as a Kleintoid instead. Kleintoids typically appear when the fourth dimensional fabric of space-time folds in on itself, creating a Mobius strip-like structure known as a Kleintoroid. Part of the process, or part of one of many processes to create portals, functions thusly. With enough energy, atoms can decay. This may spontaneously change a neutron into a proton, thus ejecting an electron to stabilize the charge, or vice versa, where the proton is made to become a neutron via the proton absorbing an electron. This secondary process is what's important. In the second process, there is an excess energy, and it is released in the form of a gamma ray. Uranium oxide and U-238 are examples of substances that have a high likelihood of going through this process and emitting gamma radiation. This gamma radiation creates enough energy that once it hits another atom, it is able to stimulate a process known as pair production. Pair production creates a particle of matter and its pair particle of antimatter. The matter is an electron, and the antimatter is its opposite, a positron. Positrons typically come with neutrinos. These two particles are what start the process of rift creation. The antimatter will typically get destroyed once it makes contact with matter. However, there are situations where this does not occur. Those naturally occurring fourth dimensional Kleintoids mentioned previously are the key to this process. Alternate dimensions connect to the same or a similar plane as these Kleintoids just as we do, and thus can connect to our dimension. If one side has the process of pair production occur like this, the antimatter may become trapped inside the Kleintoid. Since this structure is a non-orientable surface with no volume, the positrons and neutrinos continue with their momentum and are negligibly affected by Newton's first law within the structure they now reside. Once there are enough particles of antimatter, the energy buildup is too great and tears a hole in the structure, allowing the rift to appear. We do not know how to make a Klein bottle, nor how they are made. With shimmers, the same process functions, with the Klein bottle connecting back even within our own dimension of space and has a much more limited range, presumably due to a different process causing it. The process as a whole is unique to locations such as these mines and not in other places where this would presumably occur, such as nuclear reactors. This is why there are likely multiple unknown factors that go into this process, but consistent output over large output is the most likely culprit as to why it is more common in rare earth mines or Skinwalker Ranch. Basically, more energy means this process happens more frequently, as opposed to with a higher intensity, and thus has more chances to be successful, even with a low chance of pair production occurring in this process to begin with. That is why rare earth mines are hotspots. These materials and energy are everywhere, and repeating this process more than anywhere else. If you are interested in the substances that may be the catalyst for the portals over at Skinwalker Ranch, the most likely culprit is the phosphate and potash found there. Now, what of the cryptids that leave these portals and come from these dimensions? Well, they will have special properties due to evolving in a habitat where the physics differ from our own, including universal constants, which I suppose now need to be renamed to dimensional constants, if even that. The variation of these constants can be large or minuscule, and this reflects in the biology of the inhabitants and their reaction to a different system such as our own. With the portals linking to areas that differ so wildly in climate, even with links on our own planet, these rifts cause major pressure differentials and thus create massive impactful storms and affect the weather wildly. For example, a portal may connect from 8,000 feet up to sea level, where the air pressure is much different. Portals will have a horizon width with a unique sectional Planck interval depending on what is connecting, and a unique thickness for the same reason. Horizon widths also deal with time, and the width directly relating to the speed of particles and waves. Each dimension has varying constants in particles, which result in having a unique aforementioned sectional Planck interval for different particles. When talking about these unique intervals of speed, I will refer to this measurement as horizon whip, for how these particles and waves whip around the dimension. To be clear, this is not a term Knox uses and is simply for the purposes of this video. The thickness of a horizon width can be as small as an atometer, which is more survivable for a creature coming through than thicker widths unless the creature's systems are not affected, which I will now explain. Each part of our bodies, and the cryptids' bodies, have a varied sectional Planck interval throughout, as mentioned before. The atoms in our bones pass photons at high speed, specifically the speed of light, as their way of information transfer to themselves and other atoms. Most information in the body travels using light and maybe takes an attosecond. The heart and brain, however, are transmitting and moving much more complicated and necessary functions. These can take milliseconds, a long time on an atomic scale. If one part of the heart slows down by being on the other side of the portal, but the rest of the heart haven't moved through, there is an imbalance. This means going through a portal with an incompatible horizon whip will result in an effective brain death or heart attack. The bones and tissues and muscles can still transmit to neighboring cells at the speed of light, but even a slight altercation in such a speed can cause a slow decay. The rest of the cell's functions are not processing at the same rate and are failing to do what the tissue needs in time to stay stable. If the tissue is not replaced with tissue more suited to the environment, decay will occur. Thus, cryptids that come out of portals consume a lot to remain stable. If they die, they cannot remain stable and effectively dissipate. Offspring may be more suited to the environment due to being born out of its tissue. There are cryptids that decay when alive. These are dubbed zombie cryptids. These appear rotting and are voracious in their search for food. However, the decay will have also slowed them down. If you see one, the best option is to GTFO. There are things to note about how these cryptids evolved. First, we do not live in 3 dimensions. It's closer to 3.5, accounting for time. If we didn't have time, it's not like time would freeze. It would be everything, everywhere, all at once. The dimensions that connect to our own are lateral and are also in 3.5 dimensions. They just connect via the 4.5th dimension, creating a rift. Just as we cast shadows on the 2-dimensional ground with our power to block photons from the sun from reaching this area, there may be 4th-dimensional things casting shadows on us in ways we cannot comprehend. Maybe creatures do manifest vertically, but it remains unknown as of right now. If they do manifest vertically, they would manifest in a bosonic form to fit all their 4th-dimensional weirdness in one spot in our dimension. Laterally transported portal goers will remain fermionic like us. Let's take a break from other dimensions and explain a bit about our own world. If you look look at a periodic table, there are numbers lining the top of each column. In group 14, there will be carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, and lead. There is something special about these elements. Their valence electrons have the property of easily creating chains. Chains of atoms create the molecules necessary for life. Carbon makes up 0.03% of the Earth's volume. So why did carbon succeed in creating life over all the others? Well, there are in fact silicon-based life forms. They are just destroyed by the plentiful carbon life forms on the planet. As you go down vertically in this group, you will also find that the elements have weaker covalent bonds for holding complex chains of molecules. The way that this applies is that other dimensions have other constants and may be more suited to these life forms, thereby having tin-based, lead-based, and all the rest life forms. This is also why specialized bullets work on these creatures. Due to the weaker covalent bonds in these non-carbon based life forms, a diamagnetic material will tear apart the bonds. That's why bismuth bullets are so effective, but don't affect us all too much due to the element's diamagnetic properties. Tin 2 chloride is also an effective ammunition against the creatures with electrocyte bundles, as mentioned in part 1. In our own dimension, this would be very effective against an electric catfish, for example. This is because electricity causes a reaction where crystals form from the tin and expand from a negative charge to a positive, effectively destroying tissue. Finally, sodium-22 is an effective elemental weapon as well. This strange element does not go through pair production and only emits positrons. This strange feature can be exploited to shoot positrons into the already unstable covalent bonds of these creatures in a form of atomic necrosis. Of course, with cases like bismuth, for example, this would only work with creatures further out laterally, and ones closer to our dimension and constants, such as Bigfoot, would not be affected any more than us. While we are on the topic of what these are made of, one part of our understanding that may need to be shifted is our anthropomorphizing of cryptids. Yes, Dogman has a cannon-like snout, but these portals now may explain why we are missing links in some cryptid evolutionary trees. It could also explain unorthodox mutations such as in Dogman's locomotion due to mildly different environments to evolve in, but close enough that they can still function in our reality with its horizon whip being what it is. Their evolutionary ancestors simply were not here at the time when they were evolving, explaining the missing evolutionary tree. This also means they did not evolve from Earth's creatures. These are not canids. They evolved a similar snout because it is advantageous for a heightened sense of smell. That does not mean they had to evolve other canine traits. In the same vein, Knox said Bigfoot is not a primate, although I will revisit this later in the video. In fact, due to different evolution and environment, it has been found that some of these cryptids are not affected by contact with things with high Scoville units, even up to 16 billion Scoville units, such as resinoferatoxin, which is a chemical found in the cactus-like plant, resin spurge. Even in this chemical chain, you can see the strong covalent bond of carbon as a part of it, further showing the success of this element in our world. This infers the possibility that they may not have a potassium-sodium neurotransmitter channel that's similar to ours or can be affected like ours. With the conservation disease, forcing these creatures to eat as much matter from our dimension as possible to convert their cells to our own, they also seem to have different observed DNA, some alternate system, or lack thereof. You might try to recover DNA and get mammalian and gooseberry DNA instead due to its consumption. When looking at these other dimensional systems, we cannot compare it to our own systems by anthropomorphizing or using our current DNA analysis methods for proof. This is all a lot of science, so let's have a quick break and discuss lateral distance. Basically, the further away from our dimension, the more the physics may be also further away, which relates to our aforementioned horizon whips. So real quick, let's go over what cryptids may be of note in this area. We don't exactly have a list of what cryptids came from portals, but Knox did mention Bigfoot are really close to our dimension. This raises a few points. One point could be that Bigfoot did not evolve on Earth, and therefore, those who believed it is not a normal animal and is an alien or some non-earthly explanation may have been correct. Or, that the species is endangered because there's a limited amount in our world. On the other hand, this dimension is so close to Earth that it is almost indistinguishable. It could be argued that Bigfoot could easily have evolved on Earth and does not need some fantastical explanation to be real. It could also be argued that it does not need to be endangered to avoid capture. Endangered is not the same as sparse in one area but not others. Even so, we do not know their population. Given their habits, there could still easily be 100,000 in North America, and we'd be none the wiser. I personally am biased towards the second explanation, so take from that what you will. Either way, it is interesting to note. Back to the point about anthropomorphism from earlier. Is Bigfoot a primate? If it did not evolve on Earth, it would not have the same primate lineage. However, it is so similar that even the Myakka skunk ape photos have the same facial expressions seen in our primates. At what point is it so dissimilar to change its classifications? If it shares every trait but evolves separately, do we call it a primate? Does convergent evolution mean it should be called something else? We still don't have all the information as well, so maybe this is a debate best left to sit for a while. Enough jibber jabber though. What about credibility? Well, a lot of what Knox says is highly testable. And once I get my lab up and running, I intend to do just that. You can prove the tin 2 chloride works with a double A if you don't have an electric eel on hand that you're willing to torture, although the effect will be lessened than if used on an actual cryptid with electrocyte bundles. In fact, Knox expressed shock that some of this information does not have further research in the public sciences, although I have a feeling the late Ning Li would feel otherwise. For those of you who don't know, Ning Li worked on anti-gravitational technology before taking her research private when the Department of Defense recruited her to continue her research with them. And with companies like Hyperstealth Biotechnology Corporation being recruited by the Canadian government and keeping their work secret, it's no surprise that research hasn't come to light in the public eye. Any research is typically taken and privatized along with the individual responsible for it. We've seen the reason for this, like the submarine example in our Kraken video. In fact, Hyperstealth Biotechnology Corporation officially stated it is for military purposes now. As far as the rest of the credibility, it seems to match up with our current knowledge, save for the Bigfoot's heavy primate-like behavior, although that may be attributed to gaps in knowledge of origin, convergent evolution, or some as of yet unknown explanation. Again, we should sit on the Bigfoot theories until more is known. The lack of an evolutionary line on Earth for many cryptids makes sense if not enough made it through the portals to leave fossils or footprints in the form of observed residents in the millennia that have come before. It also explains most parts of why Skinwalker Ranch has such levels of weirdness. Again, further tests need to be conducted to confirm some of these points, but most of it lines up with our current understanding of science and particles anyways. Knox even cited where certain information came from. There are scientific articles explaining most of what we discussed today, from clintoids to bosons to tin 2 chloride, and is common scientific consensus. This data is already covered across a lot of mediums. Other information has names attached to them, like doctors and team members of Knox's. For the most part, there isn't even much to make up. This is just an extension of the science and cryptid stories we already know. Keep in mind this is a very complicated subject, so this video is a general overview. We do not delve too far into individual details for each topic. If you believe there's anything we missed, however, please leave a comment letting us know. Keep in mind, portals may not be the only way to access other dimensions. It is just the only known way with our current information. Thank you for making it this far. Subscribe for more information like this in the future. Have an anomalous day. Goodbye.